Nowadays, technology makes the world go round, convenient, dependable, and easy to use, as it permeates every aspect of our lives, payments included. Now, cash is definitely no longer the king with the rise of digital payment revolution. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Analytics Insight podcast, where we talk about some exciting innovations in the technology world. And I'm your host, Priya Dialani. Now, finance, perhaps more than anything else, keeps the wheels of the global economy running. The importance of digitization in banking and payment systems cannot be underestimated. Now, even before the pandemic's onset, digital banking, mobile payments had definitely registered significant growth, including in emerging economies as well. Inexpensive smartphones and access to high speed internet have ensured a thriving e commerce industry in several countries of the world. But what does it implies to business worldwide? And is there like another side of the coin to it? To talk more on it, we have Mauli, Vice President of Data and Site Leader for PayPal India. Hi, Mauli, how are you doing?
Hi, Priya. Thank you for having me. Such a pleasure to be here. Doing very well. Thank you.
Likewise, we're very glad that you're with us on a podcast today. Like we already know about PayPal, and I guess everybody must have used PayPal once in their life. But I would still request if you can share like a little glimpse of what PayPal is and its offerings.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I think PayPal has been in the I think has existed since 1998. I'm sure many of us are aware of the PayPal mafia and so on. I think PayPal's mission and vision over the many years has been to actually change the way money moves, and help customers pay. Over the last few years, our approach, especially with the new CEO coming in, we've actually changed our philosophy and approach. We are here to actually revolutionize commerce. Money is core to commerce, but not everything. And so our vision and mission today is actually to revolutionize commerce, and that's what we breathe day in and day out, and that's why we are all here to make all our customers' lives better as they use PayPal to transact.
Glad to know. And if you talk about your role, I think you have a range of expertise from data science, big data, risk and compliance, forecasting, payments, and also you have got the opportunity and the pleasure of working with some of the C-suite levels leaders in the overall world. So, can you tell more about yourself, your roles, and contribution towards the company?
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, so I've been in the company since 2009, and so a little bit more than 14 years. So grew up in Chennai, went to school here, and then worked for a year as a software programmer. Went to the US for higher studies, masters, and then I was fortunate to go to Wharton for a PhD in statistics. Changed who I was as a person, got me thinking very differently about problems. And then I came back to India, worked for American Express for a couple of years, and then did a startup for 4 years, and then I joined PayPal. This experience actually paid huge dividends for me in the company, and I joined PayPal to lead consumer risk analytics out of India, and it was an amazing experience. So within the company, without going into too much detail, we have time to ask a lot of questions, right? And so just keeping it at a very high level in the company, like you described. See, when you spend 14 years at a company, especially a Silicon Valley company that cares deeply about people and is, at the forefront of innovation, you get an opportunity to do variety of things. And so I did risk analytics, different forms of risk analytics for like 6 odd years. Then I moved into the data space, worked on data products, data engineering. And then I actually moved out and worked on a pure play product and technology team focused on delivering like our privacy solution for the company, right? Like adherence to GDPR. So I worked on that. Fascinating experience. Worked on financial crimes for a while. Again, thinking about strategy, automation, data analytics. Went back to risk for a few months, but then back into the data space a little bit close to a year now, and leading all of the foundational, data platforms for the company, thinking about instrumentation, experimentation, data at scale, journey analytics, behavioral data, thinking about all of the foundational data platforms in the company, even as simple things as how do you move, from source to target within the company. So fascinating experience. And like you said, right, working with a lot of senior leaders. Data is at the forefront of, a lot of what we need to power if we want to revolutionize commerce and play a role for our customers there. So very, very critical function. So along the way, Priya, like you mentioned, I think My site leader experience has also changed me as a person, as a leader. Having an opportunity to sit with other leaders from across the company, from the C-suite, and talk to them about what they see in India, what they want to, what they want their teams to work on. How do they think about, growing teams? How do they think about investment? It's been a fascinating experience. We had an opportunity to host our CEO end of last year, November. First trip for him outside the US, and coming into APAC. He was in Singapore and then in Chennai in India. Is great. These are amazing opportunities for you to understand how the company's where the company is going, how the company is changing as well. So it's been a wonderful ride, and I can't wait to share more.
Glad to know your story and journey, Molly. And I think you very well highlighted a very important aspect that data is the forefront of everything that we do today. And now studies show that the global digital payment solutions market is poised to reach somewhere around 450 billion USD dollars by 2028, which has a notable 23.4% of CAGR. Now, this surge in digital transaction heralds a new era of payment analytics, which urges businesses to decipher revenue patterns, understand customer preferences, or predict the emerging trends as well. Now, embedded within the payment data, I believe, are extensive reservoirs of knowledge that are awaiting discovery. So, by interpreting, I guess, transaction volumes or average values, success rates, businesses can uncover hidden opportunities and craft growth-oriented narratives. Now, having said that, I would want to understand what are your views on the current landscape of data analytics, and probably if you can give like a more a niche approach considering landscape of data analytics of India.
Yeah. No, I think it's what you said was, an amazing summary of, the world that we live in. Priya, I want to take a step back, right? So if you think about what has happened over the last 20 years or so, uh, a lot of things have actually gotten us to the place that we are in now. Like, I mean, I want to go back to even like, late 90s. uh, we worked a lot, in terms of, just thinking, doing a lot of data analysis. So data analysis or analytics is not new, right? I mean, so, this field has existed for quite some time. I'm sure 50, 60 years. Like AI has existed since the 1960s, right? So none of these is new. What's come together nicely is, this amalgamation of, data, computation, algorithms, and then people starting to leverage these pieces to drive value for their organizations, right? That's what is actually amazing about, how these things have come together, and that's why we see this as part of our day-to-day conversations, right? And so, with that context, if you want to think about what is the current landscape, of data, right? If you think about organizations that are successful, think who leverage data at scale to draw insights. There are pieces to it, right? One, of course, is, you think about importance of talent, right? So talent is, super important, right? People who are with the skill set to actually come in and solve this problem. Number two is availability of data. Like, see, when you laid out this growth in this digital space, one example that I want to share with you is that, going back as early as, to 2007, 2008, a little before I joined PayPal, we actually started thinking about mobile devices. What should we do to manage, data? What data to collect from mobile devices? How will the experience look? How should we manage risk? This was as early before, mobile first is the paradigm today. Before that, so I'm talking like, 15, 16 years back, we started thinking about like, okay, how will it look on the mobile? What should we do? So as part of, when we think about landscape today, I don't want us to forget the journey that companies are like, us, like many other companies are on, why, data analytics is at the forefront today. I don't want us to forget the past, right? And so it's always an investment that you have to make for thinking about what you might need in the future, right? And so thinking about experiences, collecting the right data becomes a fundamental building block. And then, of course, on top of that comes, okay, what are the problems that you're trying to solve, right? How do you think about experiences that you're trying to solve? So if I have to give you like a summary of the landscape, right? And, I can talk both from a payments lens, from a generic lens, but let me start with the payments lens, right? So one is the payments landscape is changing, right? If you think, from an India perspective, how UPI has come in and changed the entire landscape, This is what PayPal did, when it started, right? Like the same, concept of like a VPA concept that we use today, like a simple email ID is enough for you to get started, and send money to each other, right? Just think about how brilliant that concept was, right? And so it started in 1998, right? And so from then to today, the landscape continues to change, right? You think about QR codes, you think about, okay, I'm sitting inside I'm playing a game, and then payment happens seamlessly without me having to, go to a payment site to actually get a payment happen, right? So changes happen. And so any organization that works, and like for us, on PayPal, when we work on this space, we need to understand how the world around us is changing, right? So how commerce is changing for us becomes super important for us to understand how the payment landscape has to change, right? So number one. Number two, data analytics is important because it's a fundamental, I guess a lever for growth, right? When a company has to grow, you have to look for opportunities on where you have to grow, right? And so data analytics plays such an important role in identifying such opportunities, right? So this involves a lot of the things that you touched on, right? Like, hey, where are my customers today? What do they like? What do they not like? Who are the merchants they prefer? What is the typical, spend that they do? Do they spend in the morning? Do they spend in the evening? Do they spend more on a weekend? Like what days of the week matters? Things like this, just a plethora of questions come up, and that helps us grow companies. So growth is one aspect, and you touched on another important aspect as well in terms of managing risk, managing, cyber security threats, managing, compliance. There are a lot of aspects in terms of where we leverage data science, analytics. A lot of it is powered, of course, by AI, machine learning. So the idea is that we have to operate at scale, right? So you're talking about, an organization like PayPal where we have, 420 plus million, active accounts. And so when you think about that scale, we operate in 200 plus markets. We have to operate at scale, right? So you have to think AI, machine learning. So very, very important for us. The way we think about it is that we are in the business, like I said, in terms of revolutionizing commerce, right? A fundamental building block is trust. So building customer trust, protecting the trust becomes super important. That's where, we leverage a lot of AI, ML and, analytics. We can talk a little bit more about the risk side of things and the compliance side of things as well. But these are some of the building blocks. And when you think about an organization, especially like PayPal, where the landscape is changing so much, analytics, data science, AI helps us stay ahead in terms of the innovative, approach that we can bring. At the end of the day, we want to make a customer experience just super smooth and make it seamless. From all of these perspectives, you have to have a strong analytics team. You have to have a strong data team. You have a strong ML team to make sure that you can accomplish these things. In my mind, that's how I look at the landscape today.
Yeah, very, very well said, Modi. And I think you highlighted a lot of important aspects. One being that it's very important to make certain investments where you can help predict the future or understand what the future would be like, and then accordingly invest in terms of having the right data or investing in emerging technologies, like you mentioned, of using artificial intelligence, machine learning, or any such property technology that can help businesses or organizations stay a step ahead of the curve. Um, with the growing popularity of digital payments, I think consumers also have a greater number of payment options. Both offline and offline purchases are happening. So I think this is helping drive industries as well as small entrepreneurs who can now sell their products and services to customers in different parts of the city or the world they live in. And more importantly, receive payments also for these sales. And this helps, I think, businesses deliver personalized experiences, which customers are, of course, loving it. And by integrating payment analytics, I think they have a more better approach of how they're personalizing their products or reaching out to the prospective customers. So, how do you think data analytics is improving the customer experience overall?
Fascinating question. I think there are multiple aspects to that question. I want to focus only on the personalization piece,
Mhm.
Priya. Right? In a
Yeah.
sense, right? When you think about like a mom and pop store offering,
Mhm.
this kind of digital solution, you can think from multiple angles, right? Like compliance and risk and
Right.
so on. I'm sure we'll touch on those as we go along. But just
Mhm.
focused on personalization, right? Um, See, I think the beauty about uh, repeat purchases, right?
Right.
There is appreciation as a customer when you go to a shop, when the shop knows who you are. Like when you walk into a store, like how we've all grown up, like if you get recognized for who you are and appreciated for you
Mhm.
who you are, you're subconsciously, you're going to obviously go back again and again, and because you feel appreciated, you feel welcome. I think it's super important. So how do you make this happen in the digital world? In the digital world is exactly the word that you used around personalization, right? And so I think it's become a de facto standard. I think I saw a study from Accenture which said that 83% of customers actually expect some level of personalization from their financial institution. This is super important. So when you come in, I need to know, why you're here and what are you looking for, right? And so super important. Now, there's actually an amazing video that Alex Chris, our CEO, shared. I think it was around the 25th of January, and he called it the first look of PayPal, right? And so he talked in depth about how, as a company, AI-driven personalization is one of the top 5 priorities for us as a company. So personalization, super important. I want to give you some examples in terms of personalization, just so that it resonates with all of the listeners, right? And so, see, when you call customer service, right? Of course, we should prevent you from having to call customer service by tailoring our products and making sure our products actually fit the bill, right? And so, but in the corner case where you're calling customer service, great experience and personalization is when we know why you're calling. A simple example of
Right.
personalization, right? And so we invest a lot in understanding. I mean, people think about it from an automation perspective, but we can get to that later. But I just want to make sure that in the eventuality where you are interacting with a bot or with a human, super important for us to actually show up with actually understanding why you are here and with a solve rather than having to make you wait, right? That's one example of
Right.
personalization we invest a lot in. Number two, we have to know what are the problems that typically customers have, right? And so when I offer you a product that actually that satisfies the needs that you are that or gaps that you see, your adoption is going to be that much higher, right? And so it basically you feel like it's at the end of the day it's a population of one. You see what I'm saying? Like you think about groups and large focus groups, but at the end of the day it's a population of one, right? And so you have to make sure that you understand these gaps so that you can offer a solution. Number two. Number three, let's assume that you are a merchant with you started with this premise, right? So you are a mom and pop store, and you have you basically come in and you sign up for offering PayPal, right, from your store. It's great. Now what the idea here is that as PayPal grows and we grow, because you as a merchant are growing, right? And so as you grow, your needs also evolve. And so are we there to actually understand what your needs are and offer you tailor-made products that are going to continue to help you grow and scale? It's a super important personalization angle, right? A lot of times we think about personalization from a consumer angle, but super important to think from a merchant angle, right? Like you think about, hey, can I help you solve your tax needs? Can I help you, offer a product like, okay, first I offered you a domestic product, now I'm offering you a cross-border product. Like simple examples like this, you can think about personalization from a merchant side. Now, if you think about it from a consumer side, like how do I basically make sure that that I understand why you're let's say cart abandonment. Like if I can understand why you're abandoning carts, then maybe I can solve that through personalization, right? When you come in as a guest, you've not signed into it, and this is you will see a lot of this in Alex's video that's available on YouTube called First Look at PayPal. When you come in as a guest, if I can say, hey, oh, you're here, back here, okay, you like this, this is the card that you like to use, this is your shipping address that you prefer to use, and those can be different depending on the type of purchase you're making, right? Maybe if I buy a digital good, it's basically I like to use this card because I get more reward points here. But if I'm buying something different, I basically like sending a flower to someone or something like that, I like to use a different card. And so shipping address can be different. If I can basically leverage AI to actually capture those pieces and prompt you for those rather than you having to enter them every time, that shows personalization, right? And this is great. For example, even things like if I can basically say, hey, what, your card is going to expire, so so don't use this card, use some other card, or make you update your expiry dates with the fact that you've got a new card. Simple things like this can actually make such a huge impact in terms of customer experience. That's the kind of personalization that we have to go towards.
I completely agree with you, Molly. I think thank you for explaining about the customer experience from different perspectives, from the merchant side, from the customer side. And yes, I think as in when the customer needs are evolving, it becomes very important, not just for any financial organization or a digital payment service provider, but I guess for businesses across whoever is even supplying like a normal product, it becomes very important as to how they are solving their needs without much of a hassle, and that's where I think personalization comes in. But on the other hand, when we talk about digital payments, I think it depends on some key infrastructure components like network, electricity, working devices such as desktops or smartphones, or any payment cards to function. Now, any breakdown in these components can potentially disrupt like the whole business working flow for the customer side as well as for the merchant side. And notably, I think significant disruptions stemming from cyber attacks are becoming like a primary challenges for a cashless economy. Further, the frequency of cybersecurity incidents leading to the exposure of personal data is now more of a common problem for financial institutions because they accumulate more personal information of their customers. Also, as online access to personal data expands, there is a notable increase in financial crimes that exploit social engineering mechanisms as well. Now, earlier also you were trying to say that you wanted to talk about the compliance and regulation. So, do you think that risk and data breaches are inevitable when we're talking about digital payment ecosystem?
Yeah. Great question. You have a very knowledgeable, set of listener group. Your question is very deep and very, very
Yeah,
timely as well.
yeah,
I think, see, um, I think you describe the complex nature of the ecosystem, and
hmm,
all have to be honest, right? I think, see, for us to
yeah,
be successful in this space, you have to have obviously, an extremely robust data infrastructure, right? And so obviously
right,
for me to power personalization, I need to have very strong data, very relevant
hmm,
data. I have to serve
yeah,
them timely. Like nobody wants to wait, right? Like you come in and in like
right,
a milliseconds, I want to make sure that I know who you are and I can give you tell
hmm,
you what your shipping address is, right? And so you're talking about
hmm,
milliseconds in terms of these things,
yeah,
right? So infrastructure becomes
yeah,
super important. The So when you talk about risks and breaches and so on, definitely a pressing problem, an extremely tough problem. I still
hmm,
remember a few years back, I was putting together a presentation that I wanted to share with some budding engineers. And I talk a lot to colleges and so on as well in terms of risk management and so on. An interesting statistic that I found, right, is that, and first let me start with something slightly older, is that if you go to the dark web, there's plenty of information on credit cards available. Credit cards, your address, your email ID, your passport, passwords, and so on. This is supposedly available in plenty. And like every organization invests in terms of trying to understand some of these things. And so from the data that I've seen, $5, $10 you get access to an email account and a password that you can go and experiment with and try. Like you see, use the word social engineering, and super important, right? And see, a lot of us are very comfortable using the same password across multiple sites, right? We do that a lot because hey, it's tough to remember all. So but technology has changed. We have a lot of tools now that we can use to manage these passwords and so on, but still a lot of people use the same password. In a scenario like this, breaches of your data being available in the dark web because of breaches, very, very high probability. So I saw a very interesting statistic. 2023, 5.3 million Indian online account faced data breaches. Statistics from Surfshark, right? And so, what do you do in such scenarios, right? So, the way we think about it, I want to share honestly as well. So, we have a significant investment that we made in terms of cyber security. We have a strong information security team, cybersecurity team. They actively look at it and work on these kind of threat defenses as such. And so breaches can occur because of human error, vulnerabilities in your software, like you said, social engineering. you know uh, the challenge for us is to actually identify them and prevent them, and make sure that they don't cause harm, right? And so extremely tough problem. But the perspective that I want to take is that there a lot of these things are preventable. While you might argue that, hey, Molly, there's no way you can prevent it, for life, but a lot of these things are preventable, right? And so you can do multi-factor authentication. You can leverage AI actually to understand, these kind of bot attacks and what's happening, what kind of, information is today available on the dark web. Are you starting to see information that was available that is starting to come in that you can basically start monitoring and prevent, create red flags so that you become a lot more, stronger in terms of your authentication mechanisms. A lot of these things that you can do. And regulations also help, right? And so, regulators also come in and make sure that, hey, they come in and check, are you, putting in the right practices and so on? Can you give us these kind of reports in terms of what implementation you have done and all of these things? A lot of these things help. And I think it's super important for us, especially as a company that's trying to revolutionize commerce, being one of the marquee players in the payment space. We are in the business of trust. We used to think that we're in the business of money, but we are not in the business of money, right? It's we are in the business of trust. And so and it becomes super important. And so managing these threats become important. I think awareness becomes super important. So educating our customers, us educating ourselves in terms of what's happening around us becomes super important. And it's a rapidly evolving space, Priya. A lot of professional are out there trying to basically launch attacks and so on. You have to bring your A game every day, and that's what you do. So it's a challenging problem. We learn every day. We try to bring our innovation every day into that space, and we try to tackle it head on.
Definitely, I agree. I think we are far away to a future where we can totally prevent or completely prevent data breaches or cyber attacks. I think with the evolving landscape, like you mentioned, even the bad actors and criminals are also evolving, and they are also leveraging emerging technologies to conduct such crimes. But definitely, we understand that when we're talking about data analytics, I think it gives businesses the agility to navigate from their complex terrain of modern finance, while also leveraging data to drive strategic decision making and ensuring fostering long-lasting customer relationships. Now, since we discussed about data risk and breaches, I wanted to understand: do you think data analytics or deploying empowering analytics prowess can uncover hidden threats beforehand and help devise effective threat response strategies?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think data plays a vital role. I think analyzing the data becomes super important, and a lot of it is both real time and offline. I think becomes super important. And I think, see, I think what we need to understand is that, like I said, I think we need to be aware of what is happening around us, right? Like, what are the kind of threats that are coming in? How are companies trying to fight against those threats? And so staying on top of the landscape, threat landscape becomes important. Like I said, investment in dark web, trying to understand what is going on there becomes super important. But purely from a data analytics perspective, a lot of it is about pattern recognition, right? And so what you want to do is you want to look for unusual patterns in terms of uh, you know uh, transactions that are coming in, right? And so are you starting to see, in terms of time of the day, in terms of IP addresses, in terms of location, are you seeing unusual patterns from before? Login activity. I mean, see, we tend to get stuck in a lot of transactional activity, right? But what we've seen fraudsters do a lot is that they come in and check out the account, right? They kind of sniff the account and they try to see, okay, what is there in the account and so on. So you have to look at the gamut of activities, right, that are happening. Like, are people unusually trying to add financial instruments to it and so on? See, fraud itself happens in multiple layers, right? And so you have to basically look and see, are there hidden relationships that are there? What is going on there? Are you seeing unusually high login activity from certain, for certain accounts that you heard that were compromised and so on, right? And so patterns, understanding patterns and anomalies become super important in this. You also have to stay on top of money laundering trends that are out there, and you have to try and see if you can actually create those patterns within the company, where you can actually have these algorithms detect, hey, are these kinds of layering happening, right, where account goes from A to B to C to D, then comes back to A and then goes to E and then exits the money. Like, there could be a variety of patterns that be playing out, right? And so are you do you are you looking at historical activities that have happened in your own in your own payments ecosystem to figure out, are there bad activities that you can learn from, and then you can actually prevent them from happening again and again, both outside in and then inside out, right? Like, so you have to think about those things. And so mapping, creating a network of, users, transactions, devices. you know you're talking a problem at large scale, and I want to people to understand, the listeners to understand the computational problem involved as well, right? And so you need to figure out if account A is connected to account B, to account C, to account D. Like maybe the same person is trying to come and create these multiple accounts to try and layer the money to try to get that out, right? And so you have to connect. It's a combinatorial problem. Very quickly it explodes, right? You're trying to basically find out connections between accounts, find out connections between devices, IP addresses, and a lot of people come from VPNs. And so how you're going to figure what is behind the VPN and so on. And so you know and all of this while you're trying to make sure that, Priya, when you come and transact, when you really come and transact, I give you an amazing experience, right? And so that's why it becomes such a hard problem. But yeah, I mean, so you leverage historical data, you leverage current trends. Obviously, a lot of AI, ML goes into it, and so algorithms go into it to try and figure out, can you actually predict whether this is actually a good activity or a bad activity? And these things change depending on seasons, right? And so if there's poor economy, we saw a huge spike in in fraud activities during COVID, right? And so a lot of these things happen, right? What we want to do is we want to make sure that we learn from these activities. If we let one or two of these activities come in, can we actually basically learn from it and then prevent it from happening at large scale? So you have to basically learn from activities that have happened in your system, collaborate with other external partners, learn from the government, partner with law enforcement. We have a very active partnership with law enforcement in many geographies in the world. And we partner, we share what we are seeing, they share what they're seeing, we partner, we learn from that, we code in some logic as well based on what we're learning from outside in. And those are the things that help us actually prevent some of these things, all pure data analytics pattern recognition at the end of the day.
Through continuous monitoring and learning about the past trends and detecting, analyzing patterns, detecting how any such threats can arise in the future is so important. But on the other hand, I feel the security of the devices that we use for digital payments, be it like smartphones or tablets or computers, is also crucial. Because if these devices are compromised, I think attackers could gain like an easy access to your payment credentials and conduct their frauds. And to foster strong customer relationships while safeguarding against cyber threats for a company like PayPal, I think it becomes very important to implement some robust risk management strategies. So, can you highlight the importance and the need for an effective risk management strategy? And also, if you can briefly mention some of the elements that businesses should have in their risk management strategy.
Oh, yeah, it's great. I think, see, so risk, I'll tell you, again, right, when I joined the company, I got a
Mhm.
harsh, lesson in truth in terms of,
Yeah.
how you should think about risk, right? And so a lot of people think about risk as, let me launch my product, let the product grow, and then I'll worry about risk later. But risk is super important because risk affects bottom line, right? If you do $100 transaction, let's assume that, you're a company where you basically charge 5% as fees for that, right? So you make $100 transaction, you make $5. But if it's a fraudulent transaction, you lose the entire $100, right? So you'll have to make 20 such good transactions to cover that $100, right? So you suddenly realize that risk is super important because it affects the bottom line, right? And so yeah, so from that
Right.
perspective, risk management is super, super important. We are best in class in risk.
Mhm.
We've been doing this for 2 decades or more than 2 decades, and we've developed strong algorithms,
Mhm.
strong data, what data for us to collect, what patterns we see. And so we have a strong ecosystem within PayPal that we continue to nurture and grow, and that helps us actually manage risk extremely well. And when I talk about risk, right, like, and you mentioned this as part of your question, I want to cover a few things, right? And so risk itself, can be thought of as, pure play transactional risk, or, like you said, hey, like cybersecurity risk and so on. And you spoke about examples of, your devices being compromised and so on. So there are a lot of malware attacks. There's, phishing, there's smishing, there's vishing, there's a lot of ishing, going on here. And so, yeah, I mean, in a world that we live in where a lot of it is digital and mobile first,
Yeah.
you have to do a lot of education for our customers in terms of making sure they're aware of what is happening. At the end of the day,
True.
customers expect you to protect them. That is also there. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
there's an expectation that customers have that, hey, hey, come on. I mean, like, I thought PayPal was so good, you will protect me, right? And so
Yeah.
it's something that we hear a lot. And so we have to invest in that, right? And so, Priya, I want to give you some, interesting examples of what we've seen as well, right? And so,
Sure.
like you said, protecting, devices become super important. And so education is one step. What we also do is we
Right.
kind of evolve with the trends, right? And so we want to make sure that we, like, like you said, hey, if your device is compromised, I have to understand, is this a typical transaction that you do? Is this a merchant that you typically transact with? Is the shipping address something that you typically say, ship things to? Is the time of the day typically when a lot of these interesting things go behind the scenes in terms of actually protecting the customer, even if devices are compromised. You see what I'm saying? Like, so our risk management
Right.
techniques have to think, like that, right? And so is the IP address typically what you use and so on, right? And so these are some of the things that we can we publicly talk about in terms of how do we help from a risk management perspective. That's number one. Number two, see, with the world continuing to grow in terms of biometrics and things like that, so we implemented PayPal passkeys in a few geographies last year and earlier this year, and we continue to grow that ecosystem. So at the end of the day, right, so the more kind of authentication mechanisms that we can use, like a Face ID and your fingerprint and so on, all of those things as well help to protect you in terms of when you're to make sure that we identify you for the true you as such, right? And so that becomes super important as such, right? So that's number two. Like I spoke about cyber threat, we have to learn from some of the bad activity that has happened as well. So that becomes super important as well. Now, for strong risk management to succeed, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we get great data. We also look at past patterns, and then we basically leverage cutting edge algorithms, like deep learning and so on, to differentiate the good from the bad. Now, this becomes important because a lot of what we've realized is that we have to give great experiences for our good customers, and we have to give really bad experiences for our bad actors. You see what I'm saying? Like, that distinction becomes super important. And so this is a hard problem. This is a hard analytical problem to solve, right? And so you're basically trying to segment these populations. And so we have to leverage machine learning, like I said, risk rich intelligence to do it. And the world is evolving. The types of frauds typologies are evolving, right? So a lot of compromise that we spoke about in terms of security network and so on, plus fraud is also evolving, right? The type of fraud is evolving. So masking is evolving. People, how accounts are compromised, that's evolving, and so on. And so a lot of stuff happens, right? And so of course we protect our consumers and merchants from bad activities as such. That's why they love PayPal. That's why it's a global brand. Like you said, right? Hey, I can with trust go and buy something, buy a good from a merchant who sits in Colorado. I've never seen this person. I don't even know this person. Person has an okay website, but they have PayPal on it, right? You see what I'm saying? Like, this is something that we constantly hear, and the PayPal brands is a brand around trust and safety, and so this helps. And over the years, we've kind of learned how to manage it. And of course, the other important aspects, especially for the India audience, that they'll be able to relate to, is this whole concept of multi-factor authentication, right? And so super important. If you can leverage it in the right circumstances. Of course, we're all used to OTP in India, but in the world, it's still an evolving concept, right? And so a lot of people were annoyed when we started asking OTPs and so on, and like, why are you asking me OTP? Don't you know who I am? And so this is another important aspect as well, right? We spoke about personalization. So behavior of customers, local flavors, and so on become super important as well in terms of your mitigation mechanisms. So we have to adapt. We have to understand local ecosystem, figure out what will work for customers in that geography, and so on. And you have to look at costs as well, right? In terms of okay, can I send like 1 million SMSs every day? So my algorithms have to get that much better to manage cost as well, in terms of how many times I'm going to do multi-factor authentication. Can I do it on the app? Do I have to send an SMS every time? So there's a lot of innovation that you can bring into this space. That's what we do. That's how, we spend a lot of time managing this kind of, risk. But I wanted to give you a summary of, a glimpse of what we try and do to manage risk.
Right, right. I think when we're talking about the payments or digital payment industry, it's definitely growing, and there's no a doubt about it. But there are a lot of factors or considerations that business have to look into before developing the risk management strategy or ensuring the trust or the loyalty that probably a company like PayPal is already established. So, on that front as well, I think every organization, every business entrepreneur has to ensure that kind of trust, and that will probably it will be at a better stage where they can prevent these threats and ensuring that they have like a customer loyal base that way. But one last question for you, Molly, and that would be, how do you think uh, would be the future of data analytics?
Yeah, I think, see, I'm sure a lot of listeners, thinking about, specializing in business analytics, data science, AI, ML. I think it's one of the most important pillars of, any organization. And, not just in the payment space, right? In any space, in any organization, I think data and analytics. I know you're saying data analytics, but I want to, emphasize the importance of both data and analytics. And it
Right.
is core of what we do. And I want to share some examples, right? And so, see, the way to think about this is that if you think about analytics, right? Analysts, I'm combining a few groups here, right? And like purists will get a little upset with me, but you think about the AIML folks, you think about your data scientists, such, right? So your data scientists as a community, your business analysts as a community, these two communities play such an important role because they sit closely with the business folks, the people who interact with the customer. So if you look at the layer, right, so you have your customers, then you have your business teams that face off against the customer, then you have your analytics and data science teams that interact with these business teams, right? Such a powerful role because you understand customer pain points, you understand what the business is trying to optimize for, where they see value, where is the business going, where is the strategy going. And so data, analysts, right, the analysts and the data science community, super important. They need to understand business, they need to understand customer pain points, they need to understand ROI, how can we drive value. And so I think they play such an important role from their perspective. So people who are listening, spend some time to understand strategy, spend some time to understand how to put a business case together outside of your typical okay, let me go solve this problem using deep learning, right? The tendency to think like that is great, but I think it's such an important role because you not only grow the top line, but you actually help us protect our bottom line. I think you have an impact in both aspects, right? Like, if you personalize, offer the right product, your business will grow. You do risk management well, if you basically identify high margin opportunities, your bottom line will grow, right? So you have an opportunity to play such a wide role in a company and actually make a difference. You can understand business, you're in front of everything. I think super important. Number two is the aspect around data, right? So I want to make sure that the listeners understand that obviously identifying the right data to collect becomes super important. How do you store this data becomes important. How can you offer data products becomes super important, because at the end of the day, we are all trying to basically offer cutting edge solutions in the shortest amount of time because the world around us is changing. So how can you basically operate at scale becomes super important, right? Now, few other things that are important, right? So you have to think about how the world around us is changed, right? Like we used to be a lot of on-prem. Now we are like on-prem and cloud. So people have to be very comfortable with working off, the cloud, right? Be it Google or Amazon or Azure or, whatever is the flavor of the day, right? Or in your organization. So you have to think about, those skill sets. Now, for an organization to be successful, and this is where the future comes in, right? We are hit with, rapidly changing, innovation around us, right? You think about Gen AI, how Gen AI has come in, how large language models is now, changing how we think about interacting with our customers, how we can be more efficient in terms of writing code, how we can be more efficient in terms of generating insights. A lot of these advancements are coming at us, right? And so as people in the data and analytics space, become super important for us to understand how technology is changing around us, but not lose sight of what is the business problem. How can you drive value for the company? How quickly can you turn around and offer an insight that's actually going to move the needle for the business team and the customer? We have to, balance these two. You know, you can argue diametrically opposite, things like, I want to create the most amazing technical solution. Give me a year. Whereas your business team is knocking on your door and saying, hey, you know what? I need a solution in the next, 30 minutes. You see what I'm saying? Like in this world, data and analytics folks play such a crucial role in balancing both the technical aspect and what the business needs. And if you can actually bring in that balanced mindset, you can actually adapt to what the business needs while you solve technical problems at scale. I think the future is very, very strong. We need amazing data folks, we need amazing analysts, data scientists for us, because we are the ones who can actually take the business to the next level. At least that's my thought process.
Right, and first of all, thank you for rectifying me that it's not data analytics, it's data and analytics, and definitely both have a different role to play into. But if I would want to conclude, I would make it like a more poetic, where as the curtains fall, security clasps hands with convenience. Banks orchestrate the symphony, merchants showcase their wares, and consumers, the mass guests, reveal their preferences. And in all of this, payment analytics dissects this entire choreography. So it's all about understanding human behavior, economic shifts, and technological leaps, because behind every swipe, tap, or click lies a trail of data. What's really important is translating data into meaningful insights to adapt and thrive amidst the ever-changing dynamics of commerce. Well, thank you so much, Molly. It was a pleasure having you with us today on a podcast and helping us understand the various roles or the future of data and analytics.
Thank you so much for having me, Priya. I loved the conversation as well. And I loved how you summarized it by a poem. Definitely stands out. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. So this is for our listeners. Stay tuned for upcoming podcast, and you can view and listen to all our podcasts on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you.